Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge, and I'm joined this evening by Mr. James Fox. How are you?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Just great. So we have a guest for the evening, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring him out now because there's no reason in waiting. Mr. Delicious 13, Beefloaf. How you doing, Beefloaf?
I'm wonderful, guys. Thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll just start with your guy. You guys just took a jaunt up north of the border to Milwaukee. You guys had a big tailgate up there. I saw a bunch of the interviews online. You want to just go ahead and tell people what was going on up there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've coined these in the past, the hashtag 108ing road trips. We generally have partnered up with Sox Machine. We did Milwaukee in 2021, decided that the White Sox are back in Milwaukee on a weekend. We're going to do this one again. What we realized, too, was although we do a good job of getting people together, one of our main weaknesses is the actual logistics of the tailgate. So we included our friends, the Chicago Sports Bums, who are absolute pros at this. And so we journeyed up there. A lot of us went up on Friday, although we didn't attend the game, just kind of hung out in Milwaukee. And then Saturday was the event. We were in the lots at noon. It poured for most of it, so it was raining a lot, but we had tents set up, and still a fair amount of people showed. We probably undershot what we thought would show up, but given the rain, it was a big crowd that we had in there, and it was a really great time. A ton of food. We had hot dogs and pulled pork and stuff. We had beer that was provided by Pilot Project Brewing, which has a location in Logan Square in Chicago, and then also one up in Milwaukee, which Treasy and our wives visited when we first got there. Great facility in Milwaukee, just a beautiful place to go hang out in. They brew right on site, very cool. And so it was a fun time. We had one of the ladies that hangs out in 108. She cooked up some cicadas and infused them in Malort and was dealing Malort shots with the cicada in there. So I had to do one of those for sure. And I, unlike other people, a lot of people swallowed their cicada. I didn't. I wanted to chew all 17,000 legs. I wanted it to feel like I was chewing up a roach, so I decided to do that. But fun time had by all. The Sox unfortunately lost the game. But it was good to just get Sox fans together. I mean, that's what those things are about. Just everyone hang out, commiserate together, and just have one fun day together.
It looked fun on Twitter. That's for sure. And I know Ian's a concert guy. I love Milwaukee. I used to go to I would go to the rave all the time and just drive up and then drive home. It's a great city. I was not in Milwaukee this weekend because me and my wife did potty training boot camp for a 2-year-old and it was brutal. So I am glad to be doing this podcast. So yeah. It's not totally potty training, but it's a decent segue, I guess, to our fearless leader of the White Sox, Pedro Grifol. So if you look back, when Pedro Grifol was hired, I have some really stupid tweets about this man, but I will say, one of the reasons I wanted to have Beef on was because he saw through this immediately. And I don't know if it's that, he saw through it or if he was just skeptical because he's skeptical of a lot of stuff, but he was just nope, not buying it right away. He was correct. I was not, I don't remember Terry Bevington, but this is the worst White Sox manager of my lifetime for sure. And how much the manager matters, whatever, right? But just Beef, overall, how much does it matter if this guy's here the rest of the season, essentially?
It's kind of funny. I've been weighing this for the last few weeks because I did do a blog about, potential replacements and just trying to think through that process already. Well, what could happen eventually when they hire the person? But this is more about launching Pedro tomorrow or something like that, so that he's basically out of our hair. On the one hand, replacing him, you're not going to get your ideal candidate when you do this. So the upside of it with regards to improvement of anything that you consider management, whether it is setting the lineup daily, where it is preparation for the players, whether it's communication with the media, none of those are going to really be materially changed, I would imagine, if you change the person in here. Conversely, though, because he's proven so little competencies at anything, there should be almost no harm. It's one of these things where if you got, I don't know about you guys. I pay attention, but I don't know if I pay attention enough. I've not seen a focus on that guy's a Pedro guy or that guy's very supportive of the manager. I haven't heard any of that. And recently, when there was comments about the team being flat, the other players, they weren't disrespectful. They just disagreed with the manager. And there wasn't anyone that they talked to that said, yeah, I agree with Skip. We were flat. We didn't, none of that really kind of supporting him. So my general thought there is like, if you got to give the keys to Charlie Montoya for 3 months, and at a minimum, it's a little bit of relief for us, the fans, not having to hear Pedro's goofiness every day. So, if it can't hurt, why not do it? So I'd be fine with it. But again, I'm with you, James. I don't know how much of a real effect it would have.
Yeah, because he's obviously not fired because like Jerry doesn't feel like firing a manager and paying him, right? Like that. So like, is there, like you mentioned Montoya, like I'm willing to get crazier than that. Like, what is Grady Sizemore doing? Like everybody talks about Drew Butera, who's sitting down in the bullpen as like this future manager because he's a backup catcher. Let's see. Like that, fine. Like they could have somebody different manage this team every week for all I care, as long as I don't have to hear Pedro Grifol quotes anymore. So yeah, I feel like a lot of it's for us, right? Like the team's going to be bad regardless. Like, is he actively going to hurt like the development of players that matter later in the year? I don't know. That might be no. But if you think it might be yes, like they should probably do something else. Like,
James, you're right. This brings up there's a great scene at the end of the movie Casino where they're in the back of the courtroom and they're talking about Andy Stone, who was kind of their political guy running everything. And they all the mob bosses are like, oh, he's a good guy, all this stuff, whatever. And they get to Remo Gaggi, who's the leader. He goes, why take a chance? And that might be what it is. Like, I don't know if Pedro actually actively hurts them. I don't know how much time a manager spends with any individual player. And if we got to the point where the roster was where he was forced to play guys who you want played, how much would it matter? But why take a chance? You might as well dump.
Go ahead and bring this up. Need to get rid of him because of the way he treats I assume this means the rookies. I don't know how. I don't know what Pedro's doing with the Rockies, but I have to assume it's the rookies. I have to agree with that. Is that I don't want our rookie players, like the guys who are supposed to be the future, I don't want them anywhere near this guy personally. I don't trust him to develop anybody. I see the way he throws them all under the bus. Just doesn't seem like a guy that you would really want around for a, quote unquote, rebuild manager, like Ricky Renteria, how he went about things with all the young guys and they all loved him. And I know that you guys are staunch Ricky supporters. And at the time I was of the thought, well, if we get somebody that's going to be better, to push a team over the top, it makes total sense to me. But then they went in the direction they went and in the complete opposite direction of what you thought they were going to do. So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that sentiment too, and I was thinking about this too. There's a bifurcation of which rookies. He seemed to treat Brian Ramos well, like played him all the time, was like, we're going to have this guy in the lineup, whatever. And Ramos is a level above a lot of the other guys that were coming up here. And he did play Colas too, mind you, in the beginning. Colas stunk out loud. So I've been trying to compartmentalize like the level of treatment. He does feel free to talk about those guys and doesn't seem to feel as free to talk about the tenured guys, we'll call them, the veteran players. And so, yeah, I don't like, it's tough for me to read, but I can't disagree with your sentiment there, Ian. Like, like he doesn't seem to handle them in a way where you feel like, oh, he's their biggest supporter, the younger players. And that's probably not a great approach. It's okay to paddle some people occasionally, but really development in any industry, in any organization, management is like, you want to have their back. You want to help them improve. You want to have them learn through things. And it doesn't seem like to be his mode at all.
Well, that's who do you guys think, like the Martin Maldonado decision making, like whose decision is that? Like, is that Pedro loves him and just like wants to keep playing him even though he's terrible? Or is that like the organization truly thinks he helps the pitchers, but like the pitchers don't really matter. The guys that are, like, okay, you want him to like catch Garrett Crochet like every fifth day, like that's fine. Then
right.
Play Corey Lee the other days then, but that is not what's happening at all.
Yeah, and they're only like smidgenly playing Corey Lee more and more lately. Like you kind of have noticed it. Like he is more the primary guy recently, but it's taken a while when it's obvious Maldonado's cooked and this young kid is now prioritizing whatever Corey Lee needs is I think is a good approach in general. But yeah, it's taking a little bit.
Steve Stone had a higher career OPS than Maldonado has right now.
Did Stone bring that up on the broadcast or no?
I mean, I didn't hear it.
He had to.
tuned
He
it
had
all
to.
out.
I guarantee you, he knows. So.
Oh, he probably knows, yeah, for sure. But I had 4 minor league games that I was fully engrossed in that allowed me to tune out the White Sox for today. I had somebody ask me earlier today when Pedro was going to get fired, and I said, "Well, they're only 30 games under 500 right now. I would wait until they're 50 games under 500, so about 3 weeks from now." So. Do you think he gets launched here in the near future, or you think they're going to wait for I don't know, after July or something similar to that?
I don't know, Ian. I'm not of the willing to predict here. I don't know if there's the Sox look real bad against the Cubs the next 2 days and boom, he's gone, or if there's just a level of look, we're gonna ride this out because like initially a lot of it we thought was the sunk cost issue, right? Jerry doesn't want to be paying for this guy to do nothing. At some point, though, that runs out, right? You're as you eat away at the days, that thing gets less and less. So I don't know, but he could be gone any day. Like he's deserved to be gone whenever.
Yeah.
So I would be fine with it. Wouldn't bat an eye.
You might know this better than me, Beef, but my assumption has always been guys don't really manage or coach like in lame duck years, right? So he has 1 year left on his deal. I don't think there's any way he's managing next year on a 1 year deal, right? So that means extend or fired. Like extend, like I can't even like say it with a straight face, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
My thought is, but yeah, I like Ian. My thought on that is like as soon as Joe Colley reported that Reinsdorf wanted to do it, we have him for the entire season, just out of spite. Like there's no way that Jerry Reinsdorf is going to let Joe Colley be right about this.
That's fair.
Do you want to move? To watch.
It's absolutely maddening, and I got to say, the interview that you did with Jackie up in Milwaukee, that one pretty much summed everything up perfectly. I mean, absolutely brutal. Do you want to move to the GM side of things here, James?
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
So we were talking about, and this is one thing that you guys have been really big on over at the 108, the amount of roster churn that the White Sox have been going through this year. Are you happy with the amount of roster churn? Do you want more roster churn?
Ian, I love it so far, and I would be open to more. If there was someone that came free, a potential waiver claim, someone's 40-man got too packed and had to push a guy out there, yes, we're absolutely for that. We love to pick these guys up. Like right now, one of the only guys I care about in the lineup is Corey Jokes. I just want to see that kind of lineup every day. He might not be able to hit. He's 28. He's got power. He's got speed. Let's figure out. Give him 300 plate appearances. Let's look at what we got and see if you found something. I noticed that the 2012-ish White Sox seem to find a lot of guys, like usable parts. And then the 13 to 23 ones found less of those. I need the Sox to go back to where they can find more of that, a little more roster churn. And right now you got the latitude to do it. You have the optionality to like flip out guys and give guys some chances. And so like Jokes is the example for right now, but I mean, kind of anyone else they scoop up that might be willing to take plate appearances, especially in an environment with a low offensive output, just in teams in general. Bring the hitters. Let's see if we find one.
Somebody like a Kevin Pillar.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in theory, yes.
Well, I mean, like literally anytime a guy gets cut or DFA'd, it's like even what did Pablo Lopez just say with the Mets? I was like, bring him in, because if he comes in and he's really good for 5 weeks or decent, like you just trade him and you get something, right? And people are like, oh, you're not going to get anything. Okay, but I'd still pick him up. I'd still pick him up at the chance that you could get something. Like who, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. They never did this under Kenny and Rick when they should have been doing it. Like in 18 and 19, your 40-man is stagnant. You're playing Adam Engel and Yolmer, and just like, you know, you'd see these guys get DFA'd and fans are like, hey, why don't we pick up this guy? And like, usually, I mean, they're right. Like it doesn't mean the guy was going to be good, but it's like worth a shot because your team's not any good. Right. So if any one of your scouts likes a guy and all you have to do is like hit a button and they're on your team, hit the button, like just like claim more players, So
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
low probability moves, but so what? Try them. Like, you
Yeah.
have no downside in these spots. I put a tweet out there and Victor Robles got DFA. Now, I don't think Victor Robles can hit, but regardless. And I got so many people. I was like, White Sox fans, you think? Almost everyone was like, yeah, bring him on. Let's see what he's got. It's like, why not take a chance on lots of different guys in these spots,
Yeah.
especially if you have the potential to hold them, if they've got years of control that are just laying there. Like Jokes is a great example because if it does hit, you have a couple cheap years, and so great, you will have a usable player.
Me and Ian were talking about how hard the Sox Machine Sporkle quiz is going to be for the 2024. How many?
Impossible.
Like 103 players like played on the 40-man roster. Yeah, it's just going to be absolutely insane. Yeah,
can't wait.
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to need somebody to come up and play when Tommy Pham gets traded.
Right.
So they need to grab somebody. I don't know. There's not really a whole lot in Charlotte that you really want to bring up at this point to play the outfield in Chicago. I mean, they already brought Deloach up for a game or two. It wasn't very long.
Right.
So you're going to need to fill out those slots eventually. So if you see somebody that's just laying around on the waiver wire, might as well do that. And while we're at it, did you enjoy the Tommy Pham interview in the post game today?
Yeah, I loved it. I saw some people, backhanding White Sox fans are desperate for anything. But I thought it was funny from two perspectives. One, I liked that he totally trashed the send, hated that the third base coach made him tag up on that. And he was like, that's awful. And then he's ready to stomp a guy out. Look, when your team is playing that poorly, you got two ways you can go about this. One, you can be like, I don't give a fuck, and that's it, whatever. This guy still wants to win. He's still out there trying hard and playing hard. I respect that. I like that he still has some fire in his belly at 36, and on one of the worst teams ever. So I enjoy it.
Well, the catcher is young, but he clearly didn't read the Tommy Pham the bottom of the scouting report, which is don't talk shit to this guy ever. This is not the guy that you want to, because he's going to throw hands in a game. He just doesn't care.
Right.
So yeah. The catcher's just oh, what was that? And Tommy was ready to go right then and there. He's like, we suck. I'll fight. Let's do this.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that would pull I'm going to fight the entire team.
Yeah.
In front of their dugout. I don't care. I'll go over there and I'll start punching you all in the face. He doesn't care.
He's
is it
Garrett. Yeah, exactly. Is it raw or delirious? Eddie Murphy, when he's talking about that with the Italian guy with the IROC, that's Tommy Pham. That's he's gonna fight the entire world. Yeah.
I'll fight everybody. Exactly.
Fantastic. So you wanted to get into pitching development here, James?
Yeah, so just so not even necessarily on the minor league side, but obviously me and Ian are following the minor league side pretty extensively. And, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, but that's why they have 25 of them that we talk about, which is good, right? So this is a thing. I don't know how much of it is the Brian Bannister effect, but I mean, even Eric Fetty was a pretty solid move. Garrett Crochet, maybe he would have done this under anybody, right? I don't know, but that's pretty positive. And then, everything that's failed is a 1-year deal for $1 million, right? And they still have guys that they might be able to spin off. So I do think if there's any sort of silver lining, it looks like they might be able to develop pitching going forward.
Yeah, it does seem that way, and it seems like it's hard to tell what's what, but there does seem to be some sort of Bannister effect here. I saw a tweet by Chris Clegg that was showing there was a ratio improvements in the minors, the amount of pitchers that had K- walk percentage of over 20%, swinging strike rates, called strike rates, everything kind of bumping up for the group. And a lot of guys seeing improvements in the ratios. And I agree. And we shouldn't look at it if there are failures that's a problem. They're trying stuff. Bannister is going to try things. That's kind of his deal, right? And so some of these things that we saw, I kind of wondered about it, James. What the hell is Brad Keller doing here? And I wondered if it was just he wanted to try something. He saw something with that pitcher and said, let's try it. And they realized it didn't work. All right, see you later kind of thing. I wonder how much they'll be doing that over the next year or two as they sort of I don't want to say, I mean, I don't want to use this term, but like heal the White Sox organization.
Well, no, and they did it like almost immediately too, right? Like he traded Matthew Thompson for to get Bailey Horn back. That didn't work. Bailey Horn's like in another org, right? But they clearly
Yep.
like, okay, well, they didn't think Matthew Thompson was going to be anything. You know, the Christian Mena trade. I know Trey's here, right? Like that one doesn't look great. But I mean, again, it's just they started, I think, just taking his advice on stuff to do, and then the best one was what Gregory Santos. He had traded him. This is the third time that man traded Gregory Santos. Like, so he clearly is running things at least like from the big league side. I don't know how much of like the minor league development like Brian Bannister is responsible for, but you know, the pitch mixes and stuff are a little bit different. I saw Ian, you put the message from Andrew up there. It's probably pretty important for Crochet.
Yeah, let me see. There it is. Crochet doesn't do this without the Banny cutter. And I was actually going to mention this because one of the things that Bannister said when he came over was that he's constantly in search of what the next trend is going to be. And he said last year he had guys throwing the sweeper, and that was like the new thing. To me, it seems like he's kind of back going to the cutter because people aren't throwing it as much, and it's certainly been helping out people in the White Sox system. And when you say that you don't know how much he has to do with the minor league system, I mean, just look at the amount of guys that start throwing the cutter. Noah Schultz is throwing a cutter. Jake Eater's throwing a cutter. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that have started throwing the cutter within the last couple of months. So that I think that right there is your answer.
So then, Beef, since you're here, like a question for you. I don't know how closely you're following like what happened in Birmingham, like when they promoted Noah Schultz. So, you know, essentially like Noah Schultz throws every Saturday. He's like a college starter, basically. He throws 4 innings. And then they decided to leave the current 5 starters in Birmingham, and they're all good. So somebody basically piggybacks him every Saturday instead of sending somebody to Charlotte. You know, we've kind of talked about how they like want to win the Southern League title, and I don't think they want all these guys pitching in Charlotte. Just like your thoughts on that as like just like a way to develop. I know, you know, you followed Houston pretty closely, like when they were doing some of this stuff. So
yeah, I was going to say they were doing that. I think they were doing that a little bit lower level, but because they wanted to just get a bunch of different guys innings. But I don't mind it as an approach, especially if 2 things are true to you. One, the environment in Birmingham is the one that you want to develop your pitchers in. And I think it seems like they want to just, at a minimum, use up some of Noah Schultz's remaining innings there just to see how advanced he really is against higher quality hitters. And then number 2, I wonder how much they believe that the staff there, the coaching staff and the org people there is maybe their best people, because they did the Project Birmingham thing there previously. So I don't know how much of it is just they just trust the group that's there or access there, but that they feel most comfortable developing players there. But yeah, I don't mind it at all. I don't mind them trying a lot of different things with regards to development, especially if it looks like it's been successful in other organizations. I got no problem with that.
Yes, to answer your question, Clutch, yes, they just had bullpen guys. I think Garrett Shanley came in after Schultz was done yesterday. So yeah,
they had a rain out or something, right? So they were able to do it.
They didn't have a rain out. They just they bumped Mason Adams to Sunday, so he wasn't piggybacking. Because if they hadn't have done that, Kai Bush would have pitched today, which would have been on 4 days rest. So they bumped Mason Adams to start today, and he was freaking phenomenal. So, so I'll move to the next question here. What interests you when it comes to the development side of things and the prospects that are going on right now? And I know, you and I have had some disagreements on things. So tell me.
I'm not bringing up Lenine Sosa today, even though I tweeted about him, being over. No, great lead in, Ian. The guy who is intriguing me the most right now of stuff I'm eyeballing, whatever. I don't follow this as closely as you guys do, but is Mason Adams, because guys with 6-to-1 K to walk ratios are exciting to me, especially ones that are either further down the White Sox prospect list or in some cases not even there. If you look on Fangraphs on the board, he's not in the top 30. And it's like, this guy's dominating at Double A. Like, what's going on here? My question with a guy like that, someone who's maybe not as heralded, how quickly do you try to get that guy a shot? Like, is it unrealistic to say in August he makes a start in Chicago instead of someone like Jonathan Cannon or Nick Nastrini? Both guys who I haven't really been very impressed with, to be honest. But I haven't watched them in the minors. I've only seen them in Chicago.
James, you want to go ahead and hop in on this?
Well, I know how you feel. Yeah. So
scorched earth.
Right. Yeah, so like I'm personally fine with like any of these guys getting starts, but I think they're just not gonna, like, I don't know how many guys they'll add to the 40-man like prematurely before they need to, right? So
Yeah.
like you obviously, like you already have Thorpe, Iriarte, I think, and Eater on the 40-man. So my guess is those guys get the first crack. But like I can let Ian talk about how good Mason Adams is. Like Mason Adams piggybacked Schultz last year and did this. And a lot of people kind of were like, I guess just like didn't really pay attention or didn't think he was a prospect because he didn't have the game started, but he would come in after Schultz and strike out 11 guys like in 5 innings. He was a 13th rounder out of Jacksonville State. Yeah, he's just always been good. He kind of like, he reminds me a little bit of like when Davis Martin like popped a little bit, but Davis Martin wasn't this good right away, I don't think. So yeah, Mason Adams is pretty good, and that 6-to-1 ratio you're talking about, like doing it in the Double A Southern League, regardless of how big that ballpark is, I think is super impressive.
Yeah, I mean I texted you earlier today when he was through 4 innings on 34 pitches. I mean the guy he lays waste to teams. You know, it's like they can't square him up, and everything's a ground ball. And it could be the first pitch, it might be the second pitch, but it's almost always bad contact. And he gets he's capable of getting some strikeouts, but if you can get a first pitch ground out to second base, you know, why not do that? Yeah, he's been one of my favorites for probably close to a year now. He, as mentioned in the comments here, is that he just gets outs. And the thing is that he doesn't, there's not a whole lot of waste pitches. You know, every once in a while you'll see him throw one in the dirt, but I don't know as if that's necessarily, just the fact that he is not a robot and can't put the ball exactly where he wants to. Because, I mean, if he could get a first pitch ground out every single time, I don't think he has some sort of pride that he's like, oh, yeah, I'm through 4 outs here and I've only got 1 strikeout. I need to get a strikeout here. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think he's just trying to, and this is one of the things that Craig Counsell has been talking about with the Cubs, and not to take this in that direction, but he calls his pitchers outgetters. He doesn't call them even pitchers. He calls them outgetters because the only thing that he's worried about them doing is getting outs. And that is what Mason Adams does. And I love it. So that's just my 2 cents on him.
Yeah, I mean, the performance. I'm not someone who can scout and watch stuff, but just seeing the stats and then the clips I see you guys cut, I'm like, yeah, it looks like the guy knows how to pitch. I mean, there used to be a like, oh, that guy really knows how to pitch type thing. We've gotten into an era where velocity and spin has become a lot more popular, and throwing these unbelievable breaking ball. Like everyone has Doc Gooden's curveball, basically, or slide or whatever nowadays. So it's different. Another name that I'm drawn to right now. Lately, I've been trying to keep a little eye on him. Is last year's first round pick Jacob Gonzalez, because he got dogged by Sox fans. And naturally, I thought, okay, well, that's a small performance, whatever. We'll see what happens. And then I hear in offseason the guy puts on weight. He decides to get stronger and everything. And then it looks like he's been hitting. He gets promoted to Double A. What's the story on this guy? Is this guy a future shortstop, fellas? Is this like, because I'm looking at the prospects through the lens of the last rebuild and thinking, everyone won't make it. So who could be the guys that could pop up when these guys don't make it or don't perform as well as you think they could?
So, I mean, like my thought is probably second base, because I think they're going to play Colson at short regardless. But like, that doesn't mean Colson's going to be better at short than Jacob Gonzalez is. Like, I think Jacob Gonzalez can play shortstop. The night he was drafted, it was like, he's a 40 runner. People don't think he can play shortstop, but like, he's always played there. He was a starting shortstop for 2 years for Team USA. You're not the starting shortstop for Team USA, like, unless you're good at shortstop. So he looked awful in his pro debut, to the point where pro scouts were even saying it, and those guys are smarter than that, right? Like generally like a college guy in the first season, like I always harp on this, like it's basically meaningless. But he was so bad that even people that know it was meaningless were like, "Oh my god, this guy looks terrible," you know.
That's
So
rough.
yeah, like he does. He looks way better. He's in Birmingham. He looks pretty good. And anytime somebody's in Birmingham, like especially in this organization, regardless of who's running it, like I just assume that they're going to be in the big leagues, like within the next like 18 months or something. So I don't know what next year's plan is. Like we don't have to get into it, but if it entails like Brian Ramos, Colson Montgomery, and Jacob Gonzalez on the same infield for much of 2025, I wouldn't be that surprised by that.
Yeah, so the first week that Jacob Gonzalez was up, he was playing shortstop with Birmingham. This week he's been playing all second base, if I remember correctly. Might not have been every game, but he's been at second base for quite a few games, and he's looked good. I mean, the thing about him is that he just has very good footwork, and his anticipation in the field is fantastic. So it's like almost to the point where he knows where the ball is going to go before it's hit. And, he's actually paying attention when he's in the field, that is a rare thing for a White Sox draftee, is for him to actually look like he has baseball smarts and IQ when it comes to being in the field, just because he's been doing it forever. And that's how he's survived with being a 40 grade runner, is that his instincts are just that good that it allows him to be a shortstop to this level of baseball at this point in his career, So, and to be fair, last year, his swing compared to this year is, yes, he did put on some muscle, but the swing looks night and day different. He is not falling away from the plate when he's swinging. He's staying in there and really using his lower half to drive the ball. And he's looked really, really good and way different. So, I mean, like compared to the Keith Law scouting report that everybody was citing at the beginning of this year, looks way different. So,
and I wonder how much of the second base like utility is just because like Brooks Baldwin's there too. And like I think we all know like Jacob Gonzalez is probably more important, but I think it's really important for Brooks to be able to play shortstop. Like if he's truly going to be like a super utility type guy in the big leagues that can play everywhere and hit and soon, I feel like shortstop has to be part of that. Like if he's just second, third, left field, right field, it's not as valuable as if he can play everywhere. So,
I'm glad you brought that up, James, because that was the third guy on my list for this topic. Was so I saw someone tweet this. I can't remember who it was, saying like, if the White Sox next group is going to succeed, someone like this needs to pop up and be someone on the roster who's valuable. Doesn't have to be a starter necessarily, but someone who actually makes it. It looks like just stat scouting, he has good control of the strike zone. Maybe not a ton of power, but do you think it's enough? Ian, is this like someone you think when you're looking at him is like, could this be like, a better version of Tyler Saladino for 4 or 5 years? You know what I mean?
I'll go by what Dan Haloti said from Kannapolis. He's their play-by-play guy. He said that he sees Ben Zobrist when he looks at Brooks Baldwin. And I don't know if I necessarily go to that level with it, but the skill set's similar. He's just a great baseball player. It's not like you can pigeonhole him into one spot. He just knows how to play baseball, and his bat to ball is very good. His barrel control is great. Like you said, you don't see a ton of power out of the bat. It's not that it's not there, because he's hit 425-foot home runs. It's just that's not his main.
That's not his approach generally, Ian. He's not really looking
it's
to
not.
that.
Yeah, it's not like what he's looking to do. Like when you look at like somebody like Tim Elko, who says that the way that he attacks things is that the reason he's out there is to do damage and to put in runs. And that's not what Brooks Baldwin is. He's kind of more along the lines of an agitator and somebody that's trying to accomplish a goal rather than trying to punish the baseball all the time.
That makes sense.
So I think like Beef, one of your like tongue in cheek tweets this week, that I thought was pretty funny was the one about, just like it would be funny if like after all the prospects failed, like this second group of prospects is, the gist of it, like they're going to lead the White Sox to the promised land or whatever.
Yes, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So the funny part about that is like they don't have the high end prospects that they had last time, supposedly, but they're so much deeper. Like there's so many more. Like we could go 50 deep on guys that like could play in the big leagues. I just don't know, like how many of them are truly impactful.
Right.
But like if you do this properly, like that's okay. I just don't know, obviously like there's ownership questions and this and that. Like when you have a $30 million payroll, like going forward, like having a bunch of guys like this, like could be helpful because theoretically you could fill in the gaps with other guys. But yeah, it'll be funny and pretty awesome if you're onto something with this.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it too from the perspective of we have a ever increasing field in the playoffs, and so there's a lower threshold to the amount of wins you need to get to. And if the roster's filled with a bunch of 1.5 to 3 win players, that works. That'll make it. Like in the last group, you're right. We had the star power, or theoretically we had the star power, but it was filling in that bottom part. And it was the one year that they got it right is when they nailed like Brian Goodwin and all these guys coming out of nowhere and like playing decent and being 1 or 2 win players and helping the thing out. But if you had that all internally, you're right. You could overspend on a Gleyber Torres type to fill in some offense or whoever ends up that being in a year or two. So I was just like sheepishly saying that, but like it seems way more possible to me when looking down the barrel of a team that might win 40 games this season that like this could turn a little faster than the White Sox fan base thinks.
Well, just with like the amount of pitching they have, and I it's a pretty innocuous tweet. I guess not anytime I tweet about prospects, it can't be innocuous, but I think I said something like over the next 8 weeks, they're going to add a lot more talent, and they are. And like, you shouldn't hang a freaking banner for that, but it doesn't mean that it's, like it doesn't, true. But it doesn't mean that it's not bad. Yeah. Like you're going to get some prospects at the deadline. I feel like they've drafted well, and over the next 8 weeks, that's what this is going to be. So, there's some for us to look forward to. So I guess like Beef for somebody that goes to the majority of the games, like goals, the rest of like, what do you want to see that'll at least make you feel like a little bit better, I guess, like going forward?
Okay. So I got basically three tenets here for these goals of what I want to see the rest of the year. Number one, and this most important one, is to manage the young arms properly. Manage the arms in general, but the young arms specifically. So Crochet, you have to have your eyes focused solely on him and try to understand what his needs are going to be down the stretch here. But even younger guys like Jordan Leisure, who was in the bullpen, just managing these people correctly. Turning the Eric Fetties and Michael Kopechs of the world into prospects, like adjusting them into some sort of future value for this team. And then thirdly, getting a look at as many farm arms as we can in Chicago that makes sense to get a look at. Like, we're getting early looks at Nick Nastrini, who I don't like very much. We saw John Cannon. I'm okay with John Cannon. He just needs to realize he doesn't need to get his sinker in the middle of the plate. Just avoid that. He should probably be okay. But let's see more of this and start understanding what these numbers in AA and AAA translate to in the majors. It's not something I, as a layman, can do. And so I need to see it for myself. And so that's tenet number one for me. You guys got any thoughts on that, on the pitching?
So, I mean, like I went through, I talked to James about this before. I went through the 40-man and I just started cutting and slashing. I'm okay. There's like 11 or 12 guys on the 40-man that I care about. And that includes, it doesn't include the guys that I assume are going to get traded like Fetty. I just assume he's going to get traded. So he's not, part of those 11. Right. But like, I'm perfectly fine with just starting to launch guys here and there and doing that roster churn thing. So you can start bringing some of these guys up, and both Barfield and Giannis and other people have talked about Birmingham being the launch pad for some of these players coming straight from Birmingham straight to Chicago and not going to Charlotte. So I'm perfectly fine with just starting to chuck guys left and right, and start bringing guys up because, you're wasting bullets, I guess,
I think that, makes a lot of sense. It's stuff that we've talked about, obviously, like making it more broad. Like I kind of feel like we're all in agreement, like Eric Fetty, as much as like, I would like that guy, like, even if they said like, we were signing that guy to a 4-year deal, like I'd be fine with that. I just think like as a Boris guy, And this isn't even a Reinsdorf is cheap thing. This is a Eric Fetty's probably going to want to get paid one time thing. Like, why would he do that? You know,
Right.
so like they're probably going to trade him, Kopech, whatever's in your bullpen. The question for me then like turns to Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert. And I've tweeted this out and people get mad. Like, I would not do that, like either of those guys, like right now, just because like I don't know how much Garrett Crochet can help a contender because I don't know how many innings he's going to throw. And then with Robert, like there's 5 teams in baseball that could pay that price. And I doubt they're willing to do it with 3.5 years left. So, you know, for the people that are like, oh, you replenish your system by trading your 2 best guys, like I get it in theory, but those two, that doesn't seem like it's in the cards, regardless of whether those 2 guys are going to be on your next really good team or not.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, James. I don't think they're at their. I don't think you get your highest and best offers right now for either of the guys, just given their particular situations. It's tough to pay for that many years of Luis Robert, like you mentioned. And then, yeah, Crochet is. They're gonna see how much you gotta. Like, I saw someone put out there. I think it might have been Sean Anderson from CHGO. Like, they should offer this guy an extension. They should see. Okay, you want to get paid? We'll get you paid right now. And we'll start figuring out you should be here longer, you know, and maybe that's the approach, or at least looking at it when you have a lot of payroll capacity. I don't know.
I'd be totally on board. I mean, because I think I kind of said like not that I thought that he could start from the beginning. I just thought that they should try. I mean, they thought they were drafting a starter. Like the whole thing from the beginning, like taking a reliever with the 11th pick, like never made any sense to me when the scouting director said he thought he could be a mid-rotation starter, right? And then Tony came and we all know the tragic end of that story, right? But yeah, with 2 years of control, yeah, I mean, 5 years at how would you like $70 million, you know, like, you know, exactly. Like, you know, and see if you can lock the guy up. And then that's part of, you know, it's what, 20% of your rotation then. But if that doesn't happen, like I could see where they would entertain it. But again, I don't know how valuable that guy is this year for somebody good, because I don't know how many innings he's going to throw.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get that best value. The second goal for the remaining of the year, you know, they need to figure out what they have in the outfield with these middle-aged kind of non-prospect outfielders. I need Corey Joltz playing every day. I know he just got hurt making that catch, but I need Dominic Fletcher out there every day. I need whoever else you think has some value, whether it's Colas or Deloach. I need these guys in the lineup as much as possible. I need 200-300 plate appearances for each of them just to figure out, okay, you need to figure out a pecking order here because there's nothing behind them. So if one of these guys is going to be good, you need to start working on, okay, that guy's going to be deserving of playing time, and then where do you fill in the gaps around him? I think it's really that's the biggest hole right now in what I see as like the future group of White Sox is that there's not you have Luis Robert entrenched for now, and then the 2 corners are, you know, I'd prefer Andrew Benintendi not be here at all, and there's nothing really in right field nailed down at this point. So I need these guys playing just to see what we got.
Well, and apparently Andrew Benintendi's been hurt the whole year. So that's good to know. Like good, you know, like this is like out of nowhere, this man homers and then he's sitting and he's like, my Achilles has been messed up for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Like what are we doing?
Before that, it was the wrist. Before that, it was something else. I mean, there's this mountain of excuses as to why he's been garbage for 3 years now. It's like, okay, well, we just signed you for $15 million a year for 5 years, so that does us no good. So, I'm just tired of hearing it, personally.
Yeah, it does seem like these are after the fact things. Where like, you know, oh well, no, I'm fine. Okay, yeah, no, I was hurt because I stunk. There's a little bit. I'm not sure. I mean, it may be totally legit, but in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll take your word for it. And then the last thing I need to see, and we talked about it up front, is do whatever is best to help bring Corey Lee along. Because I think we've figured out at a minimum now, Corey Lee is a rosterable catcher. I don't know how far this goes, if he's a catcher number 1, if he's a top 10 catcher, kind of like, but whatever you need to do. Yeah, Trees, go on. You can read that, Ian. Trees' comment.
Says Andrew Benintendi is the kid that grabbed his ankle every time he missed a layup.
Yep, I know that. I know that kid.
I've seen that kid before. It's accurate, unfortunately.
But yeah, with Corey Lee, whatever mix of playing time makes sense to get the most out of him. If it makes sense to keep Martin Maldonado here and maybe not play him, but have him whispering in Corey Lee's ear and teaching him whatever he can for the last couple months of the season, do that. If it's Drew Butera's got to go home with him every night and they're going to need to become best buddies so he becomes this super catcher that we need, do that. Because the optionality of having potentially 2 real catchers with Edgar Carroll coming up is so valuable, like incredibly valuable, especially guys who both hit. So you can use them and you can play them at first or whatever, do whatever you need to do with them, is like potentially monstrously valuable. And we're lucking into this because this was not the plan. Max Stassi was supposed to be in that spot. Corey Lee would be in Charlotte. We would have forgot about him. So like, let's take advantage of these things when we do get a little bit lucky and spend resources making sure that he gets there.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier just about like, we don't know who the Pedro guys are, right? After like the kerfuffle with Lee and you like what Crochet like kind of talked about it, but I think Lee and Sheets were the ones that were like, I don't know what that guy's talking about, right? And
right.
Like, so I think it's probably like Nicky Lopez and Maldonado would be the 2 closest, but like, I don't even think Maldonado wants to play this much. Like he probably sees him and like he's like embarrassing himself. He's like, Coach, please, like, just, like
yeah, I
can't, you know, it's like awful. Like this is not what I signed up for. Like
he's got to be like annoyed with himself. He's got to be like, man, how am I this bad? You know, like I agree with you 100%. I'm sure that's going through his mind.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like you talk about having 2 optionable catchers and how valuable that is. Like I think Martin Maldonado is making $4 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how valuable it is. Like if you,
right.
you know, like,
that guy is horrible. Who only does this one little thing, you know.
He's awful, and like he's still getting money because there's no catching like across the league. Now, I don't know if anybody else would have signed Martin Maldonado to that kind of money, and I do like. Look, I understood it if you were going to have this like steady stream of young pitchers, and you thought he was like truly going to like make the difference.
Right.
But I mean, his defense isn't really very good anymore either. So that just looks like a miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the Corey Lee thing, everybody just wrote him off last year. And
hands up, me included, because watching him hit, and I was like, who's up there hitting? Stevie Wonder? I mean, what's going on here? This is like, I can't, unpalatable for me watching
I said the same thing. I said the same thing. He had what, like 5 hits or something like that last year? I said the same thing. The thing that we all kind of like just looked past was the fact that he had a hand injury, and he still had he had just come back off the disabled list from that hand injury when he got traded here. And I mean, it's like we gave up Kendall Graveman, I mean, for a flyer. And the thing, he was Andrew Vaughn's roommate. So, there's that mystique there. But Andrew Vaughn was supposed to be the guy. And here we are, a year later after this trade's made, and Corey Lee's hitting decent. He's playing defense. And the knock on him was always that you'll either get average or you'll get power. And this year it seems like he's found a pretty good balance between bat to ball and swinging for at least a little bit of power, not a ton, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, so Corey Lee and Andrew Vaughn were college roommates, I believe, at Cal. And one of them was the 3rd overall pick in the country. And the other one, I think, went 25th, and he was seen as a reach at the time. More career war, Andrew Vaughn or Corey Lee?
It's probably Lee at this point, right? Isn't
yeah,
it?
But who's going to have more?
I think Lee's going to have more easily.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
And even like something that we've kind of been clamoring for, the Tigers sent Spencer Torkelson to the minors today. Like, so he and Vaughn were like always kind of linked together as these like Pac-12 first basemen that were like these no doubter top 5 guys, and they're both awful. And I don't know what the White Sox have been waiting for sending Vaughn. Like Vaughn has options. Like there's no reason why that dude couldn't be in Charlotte. They just, for whatever reason, won't do it.
Yeah, we talked about this on the 108 podcast, and Treesy's thought was that they already realized that this guy's no good. They've kind of given up. They've cut bait on the thought of like, something could be repaired here. And so that's why maybe they just like, well, you're just going to ride this out here, and then you'll be, you'll know there'll be no tender next year. That'll be it. See you later.
Yeah, I think at that point you hope though that he could go to Charlotte and mash, and somebody that liked him before maybe still likes him, and then you could salvage him maybe. But yeah.
Agreed.
Yikes. So you want to talk about the prospects and the prospect core, James? Is there something that you had in mind for that? Because I
No,
know
just we touched on just, the Beef kind of talked about like if these prospects were better than the other ones, how funny that would be. That was basically it though.
Gotcha. So I mean, I know that I've seen Beef's Excel list. Crochet's back on the core for the next couple of years. I take it.
I have to update that. I usually only do it for guys who are in the majors. I mean, Corey Lee's adding himself now to the core. He'll be the newest edition of it where I'm like, oh, this guy's been here in the majors. Because I leave the prospects off until they have played enough time to be in there. But yeah, it's gotten scant now because there's a lot of names who've been removed from that group, and next core is percolating right now. As you might say, most of it is.
So who's gonna make their way off of this team here within the next couple of months? Do you see like some additional DFAs coming from some of the players that are up here? I mean, I assume that you're ready to launch Remillard at this point.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You can just get rid of Remillard, and then he'll just pass through waivers, and then you can put him back in Charlotte if you want to with a turn. That's why I like watching that whole thing happen. I was telling Treasy, I'm like, why do we need Braden Shoemake if we could just run this random guy at the bottom of the thing through there? We don't need to have a 40-man spot for this guy. He can't hit. Like you had said, James, before the season, I heard you say like, oh, great, he made the team, but he absolutely can't hit. And I remember he had a home run the first week, and we're like, oh man, well maybe he's long, maybe he's got a little power, and then he hit nothing hard afterwards at all.
Absolutely not.
I mean, it's tough. Your Lenny and Sosas of the world, right? Who have actually hit in the minor leagues that can't hit in the big leagues. Braden Shoemake has never even hit in the minor leagues. Like he's never ever hit anywhere. So I don't know. Like that's the one where, I said, oh, I think like Lenny and Sosa might be pretty good. And then he comes up and he shows you like what the definition of a 4A player is, right? But with this guy, it wasn't even that.
Yeah, no, Braden Shoemake, it's like, I knew that he was a top prospect for Atlanta for a few years. And I was like, I've been watching this guy play with the Gwinnett Stripers for 2 years now. And the guy never hits. Never. Like, how is this guy one of the top prospects in the org? And then we got him in the trade. And I was like, why? Like, what are we going to do with him? We've already got 4 of them, there's no reason to grab him. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things where they just like piled up, a bunch of guys into a trade and said, oh yeah, we want Aaron Bummer. So here's this, and you're like, thank you so much. But Schuster and Gowans, on the other hand, like those two guys have looked to be at least, useful to a point, like Gowans he pitched today. He pitched pretty well. Not great. His last 2 starts have been kind of a little bit rough, but he had like a stretch a couple of weeks ago where it was like 4 quality starts in a row or something like that. So, I mean, he looks like he could be a guy, and we didn't even know if he was going to be a starter at the beginning of the year with our conversation with Andrew Murphy, the play-by-play guy for the Dash. So, I don't know. Maybe some of those guys do end up being guys.
I mean, with regards to Schuster, you bring up, do you think there's any utility in giving him some starts down the stretch? Because he started 20 games or whatever for Atlanta last year. He's settled into a sort of a long relief role with the White Sox that he's been very effective, through the first third of the year. Would you flip the script on that as they start moving guys off and say, okay, here you go. We're going to give you 8 starts down the stretch and see what happens?
James, do you want to answer that? I've got some thoughts on it, but do you want to throw something in?
Yeah, so I mean, I thought so. Like earlier in the year, like I thought he was a definite starter. Like I thought he was he's a number 5. Like but I think like if they think that he could be like a multi-inning reliever from the left side, like this might ultimately be his best role. And they got so many pitchers. Like it's one thing we didn't really get into, right? Like you can never have too many, but they literally don't have spots for all these starters to like make starts. We've been talking about this with like the draft coming up. Like that's why I think they need to go position player heavy. Because if you add like 6 or 7 more college pitchers that you like, you're literally going to have nowhere for these guys to pitch. So I do kind of think some of these guys ultimately will be relievers, like just out of necessity. So that's probably, but I mean, yeah, I mean, anybody could start in the second half. They're going to be pulling guys out of the 108 to start in the second half.
I don't have much velocity. I was a basketball player, so I can't. I don't know if I can help in that capacity. I used to catch though, so maybe I could fill in for Maldonado. I probably could hit as well as he's hitting right now.
I mean, you might be able to get an 085. I mean, it might be an improvement.
Let's close my eyes and swing.
So like my thoughts on the Jared Schuster thing is the whole thing matters is who they're prioritizing for who they want to get innings. And it so far it's seemed to be Nastrini and Cannon. And I said I wasn't going to like go ballistic earlier, but like my thing is like those two guys for me have always been guys that I had tabbed at back of the rotation. Like I didn't think either one of those guys was necessarily going to be a savior for the rotation, like spot starts number 5. That's what I had both of them pegged as. And, it boils down to consistency of what they do. And I have yet in, I guess it's only been like 6-8 months for Nastrini being with the org, but Cannon, like I just haven't seen that consistency there where the outings are really that solid. And I don't know if he's bored in Charlotte or if he's just, if he's just going through the motions or whatever, but like the starts in Charlotte haven't really been anything that I would look at and go, we need to get this guy innings in Chicago. It just doesn't look like that. To me, it seems like this is the kind of guy that you want around for a spot start, or he needs to start making improvements, whether it be working on his pitch profiles, on the shapes of his pitches, whatever it is. The velocity's there. He's got some movement on his pitches. There's just something that's missing, and I don't know what that is. So, you got anything pressing here, James, that you're thinking about?
All good. Just was looking at Yosimar Cousin promoted to Charlotte, so it's another big. It's another big beefy Cuban that Beefloaf might see here in the next couple of weeks. So.
Oh man, I can't wait.
Yeah, so
he was weirdly on the 40-man recently.
Well, he was, and then he was. Well, so he was weird because he was signed like as an international free agent, but not with the international money because he's like 26 or something. And
okay, all right, yeah.
So I think there was like something in his deal where they had to put him on the 40-man, but he like wasn't good. And then,
right.
But they moved him to relief in Birmingham, and he's been awesome. Like since they've put him in the bullpen.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, apparently that is kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Like it's like, okay, let's see it in the big leagues and see if you can unearth something.
Yeah, that was so. Last year, the thing is he'd have 2/3 of an inning where he'd look like nobody could square him up, and then there would be 3 singles in a row. And he'd give up 2 runs. And so everybody automatically assumed that he was bad. And I was defending this guy saying, he's not bad. These guys aren't squaring up. The contact, that it was like Aaron Bummer, but more, more effective almost because he didn't give up runs all the time. It was never good contact. And I didn't know exactly how to say that, like I didn't have numbers that back me up. Like I looked like I was a crazy person, and I'm like, there's something about the guy. He's got, his pitches are really nasty. And so now that they've moved him into the relief role, his fastball went from 94 to averaging around 97. And he's still got a really nasty curveball and slider, and his changeup's still really good. And it's just coming out of the pen. And I think he's got a 1 ERA in Birmingham over like, I don't know, 10, 11 innings, something like that. Nice. He's not giving up any runs and nobody's really hitting him. So Trey mentioned it earlier, and I thought he was just saying something about how he wanted Cousin to end up in Charlotte, but he actually is in Charlotte. So awesome for him. And that's good, but bad for Birmingham because that bullpen needs help down in Birmingham. They just blew one today. Yeah. So if you got nothing else, James, Beef, you got some awesome things that you want to, talk about on the way out here?
Oh, always. So every Thursday night, or generally every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central Time on YouTube Live, 108 Podcast. That's a live stream. That's me, My Sox Summer, and Treasy E. I have a second podcast on Monday nights, 6 p.m. Central Time, on streaming on YouTube as well, called The Au Jus, in which I have interview guests and such going on. Actually, this week I've got Danny Rocket, because it's Cubs Sox. I'm going to have a Cubs guest. I've got Julie Swika coming up on June 10th.
Oh.
That should be an interesting interview because
Nice.
she's an old score personality. I really been wanting to talk to her, so I've got some fun stuff coming up there. And then Sundays, home games, we do something called the Sunday Soak. It's a live stream from my hot tub, 11:30 a.m. Sometimes we take questions. Sometimes we just ramble about the White Sox. But yeah, everything you would find from the108.com. You can find us on Twitter at from the 108. And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Delicious13. So, boys, I really appreciate you having me on again. I love chatting with you about the White Sox and picking your brains. See, I like to flip it around and find out what you guys think about some of these guys, so I'm better informed on all my platforms.
When do you have John Schriffen joining the Au Jus?
I don't have I haven't never had a lot of interest in talking. I almost have no interest in talking to any players, and I have a lot of interest in talking to that. But I would have him on, although I don't think he's doing a lot of media from what I hear.
No, it sounds like no. And I think for all the jokes and whatever, I think the investigative reporter stuff's actually kind of cool. So he might be interesting, in a setting like that.
His career path, yeah.
But I don't think he'd be honest with you anymore. I think it's.
I don't think he tries. No. I'm not sure he trusts anyone. He's looking over his shoulder. Maybe that's and
then like Ian talked about earlier, I think Jackie earned herself another episode soon too. So.
You know what? Jackie is anytime she wants to come on. Yeah. All she's got to do is ping me and come on. She's
awesome.
She's the best.
Yeah. So James texted me earlier and he asked me which one's better. We ain't taking that or Southside stand up. What's your vote?
I haven't heard the most recent soundbite, but I don't necessarily mind the Southside stand. I think what a lot of this is like workshopping stuff. So none of this feels like it's a I know what I'm doing with this. It's like whatever catches. Mm-hmm. We created the hashtag 108. I'm wearing the t-shirt right now. Yeah. When you do stuff like that, you don't know which ones will catch. This one caught, and we've done other things where like this is a great idea, and then it ends up it stinks. So it's it's all about making the content, making the media, and some of it makes it, and some of it doesn't.
Yeah, I think the Southside stand up is actually not bad. It's just like a lot of the stuff that he would say like prior to getting to that. Like if that's just your like home run call like at home, that's fine. That's fine. I think it's fine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean there were plenty of things that Hawk did that sucked out loud.
Oh, especially at the end. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Hawk weirdly created a language that a lot of people still use some of the catchphrases without even knowing. It's just an earworm got in there, and now we speak Hawk sometimes when we're talking about the White Sox. And so, yeah, sometimes that stuff works out, even if it's weird and you're like, I don't know. And then next thing you know, you start saying it. So
yeah. I know Ian's driving his son home from baseball, talking about hang whiffums, So,
yeah, duck snorts, all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I'm not saying at his games though is don't stop now, boys, because we all know that does nothing but kill a rally. That one was guaranteed to stop everything dead in its tracks as soon as he said it. Awful. So we good, James? All right, so. FutureSox.net. You can find all of our written content. You can also find a link for our Patreon there to support all of the work that we do. You can find us on Twitter at FutureSox, on the X. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox 917. We appreciate your time so much, Beef. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, my friends. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Always enjoy having a conversation with you. Everybody that came and hung out in the comments and is taking a listen, we appreciate it. Know that if you are listening to this in podcast form, you can find us on YouTube and on Twitch on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Thank you so much. You guys have a great night, and we will talk with you guys next week. Thanks. Have a great night.